Welcome back to The Real Story. By now, we all know that American conservative speaker Charlie Kirk has been murdered while he was speaking on a university campus in Utah. The suspect in the case, Tyler Robinson, was a 22-year-old Utah resident that shot Charlie in the neck with a bolt-action rifle. He was turned in to authorities. His family was involved in his being turned in, and he's currently being held on suspicion of aggravated murder, felony discharge of a firearm causing serious bodily injury, and obstruction of justice. The casings that were found with the rifle were engraved with different messages which leave little to the imagination of what his thinking was. One was engraved with lyrics from an Italian anti-fascist anthem, Bella Ciao. Another was engraved with the words, "Hey fascist, catch." Another was engraved with the symbol from Helldivers 2. So it tells us something about who we're dealing with and what his motives seem to have been. What I want to talk to you about is, I'm sure you're aware that there have also been so many people that have come out celebrating this murder. Some have been blaming Charlie for his own death, saying that he brought it on by his hateful rhetoric, which if you bother to find out anything about Charlie Kirk, if you didn't know about it before, you will fastly realize that while you may not have liked everything that he said, that he certainly was not hateful or aggressive in the way he interacted with people. Not at all. He was a Christian. He was a father. He was a husband. He didn't deserve to die. He didn't deserve to be shot. What I want to talk to you today about is what you're going to do about this. And I mean you specifically, not you as part of the population, you specifically. Is this an inflection point? I could read some of those things. I have read some of those things because I think people need to know how twisted some of the emotion and mentality has been. They've had enough attention. The question is, are we at an inflection point? Are we going to have more violence or are we going to have less violence? And that depends on the intentionality of everybody that's watching, everybody that's seeing what's going on, whether they're left or right. And I want to tell you a little bit about what the state of affairs is right now. There's an organization called FIRE, the Foundation for Individual Rights and Expression, that tracks attitudes on college campuses. They found that a third of U.S. students believe that to some degree, violence is okay to stop speech. A third. Now, in 2022, that was just 20%. Now, it's like 33%. 29% were women, 38% men, and 46% were gender nonconforming. They also looked to see where campuses stand with regard to the students' perception of their right to free expression. Of 257 campuses that were measured and monitored, 166 out of 257 got an F on the students' perception as to whether or not they had the right to speak out. Only 11 got a C or higher. Our campuses in the United States are not practicing free speech. Of the 8 Ivy Leagues, only Yale or Dartmouth are in the top 50%. Columbia, seen a lot of action on the Columbia campus. They came in next to last. Barnard was last, which is an extension of Columbia University. Those two are the last. I told you a third of students think it's okay to use violence. 71% think it's okay to shout down speakers. That if they disagree, it's okay to shout them down, not even let them speak. 54% think it's okay to block others from attending. If they want to go hear somebody speak, over half of students think it's okay to block them from attending. That's a problem. We're at an inflection point. Here's what I want to say to you. Some people are blaming one side or the other about something like Charlie Kirk's death here. They're saying, blaming the left for this because of what was written on those casings. And I can tell you, you can find 99% of the people on the left and say, did you want Charlie Kirk to get shot? And they would say, of course not. Absolutely, I didn't. I didn't want that to happen. And I would believe them when they said that. But let me tell you something that people need to understand. There are certain people in our society, maybe they're mentally unstable, maybe they live on the fringe, they're marginalized, they're out there isolated, and they don't know their place in society, and they are subject to being activated by what they see and hear coming out of mainstream media, mainstream politicians, mainstream ideology. Why? Because the number one need in all people is to belong and to be accepted. We know these people exist. And when we say things that we are aware can activate these kind of people, then we have to take responsibility for that. When someone like Luigi Mangione walks up on a sidewalk in broad daylight and shoots the CEO of an insurance company in the back of the head and then is romanticized and treated like a hero, and people rally around and lift this person up and elevate and amplify his conduct and behavior, then others on the fringe that have hungered for that kind of attention, have hungered for that kind of idolization, see that, they are activated. Does everyone that behaves in that way towards such a heinous act not have to hold themselves responsible for activating these people? We're aware that they exist. We're aware that they're out there. There's something called the contagion effect. I can tell you there are guidelines in media that are put out by the American Psychological Association that say if a young person, for example, commits suicide, there are guidelines that suggest that those of us in the media don't include certain details in the story about that person that took their life by suicide because it is likely to activate others to do the same thing. For example, we don't show the memorials where someone puts all the flowers and ribbons and things to memorialize the person that took their own life. Why? Because there are people that are maybe on the bubble and say, wow, I would love it if people did that for me. And so they're more likely to take their own life when they see that. So it's not good to show that. There are people that take their own life in some dramatic sort of romanticized way that you don't want to show or talk about how they did it because of the suggestibility of people that live on the fringe. So it's just not good to do that. And when we have people, whether they're in the media or in Congress or they're famous people, people that are looked up to, respond to these kind of acts, there's no question that this is going to trigger someone that's on the fringe, that's unstable. We have to be aware of that. In all the time I've been on the air, I have never suggested that a parent can even spank the hand of a child or swat a child that's getting ready to run into traffic. To say, no, don't do that. Why? Because I know that if I even were to say that some individual, some deranged individual would say, Dr. Phil says it's okay to spank your child, and would use that as justification to beat their child. So I can't even say that you can spank your child's hand if they're getting ready to touch a hot burner, because I know that there are people on the fringe that would use that, distort that as justification to beat their child. So I'm aware I can't do that because there are those people that would be activated by that validation. I have to be aware of that. Do you have to be aware of certain things? We have to be cognizant of the fact that when we do things, say things, that it's very likely to activate someone. So we have to ask ourselves, are we contributing to this? Are we contributing to the fact that a third of students think it's okay to use violence? that 71% think it's okay to shout down a speaker or physically block them from going. That's okay. It starts with us. Have we shot someone? No. But are we yelling? Are we raising our voices? Are we using rhetoric that every one of us can change? It's a question we have to ask ourselves. Can we, in our own way, one voice at a time, one individual at a time, turn down the temperature, turn down the rhetoric, and change what we're doing? I pray that we do. I pray that I do. I pray that you do. I pray that we all do. And I pray that we make that the real story. Wherever you're getting the real story, make sure you subscribe and follow. I'll see you Monday. If you're 64 or older, this is important. Have you ever tried to pick a Medicare plan and felt like you were nailing Jell-O to a tree? Or visited the Medicare website and found it about as useful as a steering wheel on a mule? Yep, we've all been there. Medicare is confusing, and many of those helpful brokers only recommend plans that pay them the most. That's why you've got to talk to my partners at Chapter. They're the only advisors that compare every Medicare plan nationwide to find what's actually best for you. They've saved the average senior $1,100 a year. They'll even help if you're hit with wrongful medical bills. The best part, their service is free. They can review your options in under 20 minutes. Call 352-845-0659 to talk to an advisor today.